All right, the time we have been waiting for. It's been a long time coming. Suzanne Yatim, for those that don't know, is a human rights major, a former Miss Area USA. She's an actress, she's a filmmaker, she's a writer, as well as an activist. And as an activist and a Palestinian American, she spent time in Palestine working with a peacekeeping team, and she also has a deep and personal understanding of the occupation. We're going to say this again, but for folks that might want to check her out while listening, you can find her online at The Activist, and we're going to make sure that we establish some connective tissue for new folks that are just now hearing your voice. But welcome back to the show. It's been over a year.
It's been over a year. I missed you guys.
Yeah, we missed you too. So, do us a favor. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of people, longtime listeners, who have heard your voice before. You were kind of a guiding light around here in terms of helping people understand, certainly from a Palestinian perspective, what the goings on in Gaza and the West Bank were like. But for a lot of people who are just hearing your voice for the first time, again, the show has done a lot of growing since you were last here. Talk to us about a little bit more about who you are, that goes beyond kind of the intro. And, for folks that do know, give us an update on sort of what you've been up to in the intro.
So the reason this all even came about is because I just, from the heavens, I met Quentin on an airplane and we just started chatting, and it was 2 weeks into the genocide, and I was a puddle. I was a mess. And then when he found out I was Palestinian, and he was like, "I'm so sorry," and I just started bawling in the seat of the airplane. But my job, not my job that pays the bills, but my in my soul, my job has always been to explain to people what Palestine really is and who Palestinians really are. And there has been billions of dollars spent to dehumanize us. And my job, I've always felt, is to break through that propaganda and to show you who we really are. So my family still lives in Bethlehem, and I go back all the time. In the 2 years that I've, since I met Quentin and I started coming here, I've been 6 times, and I'm going back again for Christmas. So it's so intimate for me. I walk the streets with this understanding of what it means, and I can see Palestine when I'm there through the lens of an American, and which is amazing and frustrating at the same time, because I went there in December and I shot a film, a narrative, and I told the story of 2 women and the crew. I was working with the most amazing crew, and a lot of them were these men from the local refugee camps. And there was a moment where I was watching them. We were in between takes and lighting changes, and I was watching them, and they were just kind of messing around, and there was music playing because we were shooting a wedding scene, and the DJ kept playing the music, and they were all dancing and clapping and laughing. And I remember recording them, just took a video on my phone of them, and they were so beautiful. They were so beautiful. This group of, it might have been like 10 guys. And I was filled with so much joy in my heart. It wanted to explode. And at the same time, I was filled with so much rage, because I wish that Americans or the Western world could see Palestinian men the way that they were in that video, the way I see Palestinian men, just goofy and silly and kind and warm. And that is lacking. And every time I go, that just gets confirmed. So that's just been sort of my mission in life, is to tell stories, whether it's through books or film or on stage or whatever it is. I want to tell stories that humanize Palestinians, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sorry, that was a weird long intro.
No. I'm appreciative of the intro. I'm going to be very transparent with you. Well, I mean, I'm sure that you know this. For me and Quentin, I think our primary aperture into Palestinian life and culture and people has been through you and I would say to a lesser extent, but not an insignificant extent, a gentleman that calls himself Palestinian, and he believes that by referring to himself as Palestinian, that he puts his people before himself. So that's how we know him, but we see you more frequently. He's more in the field with his work, but you being our primary lens into that world, and us, I think the last time we spoke was a little more than a year ago, so the world has done a lot of changing since then. I will say that I don't know if this is true, but maybe there was a sense of hopelessness that probably set in sometime toward the end of the last election campaign season, and so people started to feel like, I don't know, maybe there was a bit of a disconnect. And so you giving us that intro for Ramses, I'm going to talk about Ramses, is very important. It's very necessary, because although I've wanted to have this conversation with you for some time, it just didn't quite come together. And then there have been obviously some significant developments in terms of the war, genocide in Gaza since we last spoke. And so I appreciate that. I want to circle back though. You mentioned something about there being billions of dollars spent on, maybe you could say it the right way. I'm going to probably say it wrong, but mischaracterizing Palestinian people. And then you said that you shot a film where you really got to show Palestinian men in their element. I also want to, I do and don't think that this is significant, so I'm going to say this just so that our listeners know, and I happen to know this. You are a Christian woman, and your family is
Christian.
In Palestine is Christian, right? And
Correct.
so I want to say that, not because I want to diminish
I totally get what you're saying.
Islamic people, but I want to show that there is a diversity of faiths in this land for people that might harbor anti-Islamic sentiment.
Right.
Maybe that's a way that they can find some.
No, it's true. I find, oftentimes when I'm talking to people, and I've gotten really good at sort of being like, okay, if I'm talking to a conservative person and I'm talking about the genocide, what I focus on is, okay, let's really talk about America first. Let's talk about how billions and billions and billions of dollars are leaving our economy, are leaving our land, and it's going over to Israel. Like, you should care about that. It's your money. Keep your money here. If I'm talking to Christians who deeply care about Christianity, I will mention that's an important point. Hey, our country here, our government is murdering Christians in the Holy Land just casually, without any regard. They're destroying ancient churches casually without any regard. You should care about that as a Christian. So there's certain things that, like, people also don't it's so weird to me to come from a place called Bethlehem, and then for people here in America to be surprised that there are Christians living in Bethlehem, in Nazareth. Like what do you think happened? Where do you think your religion came from? And people think people think when they find out I'm Christian, they think I converted from Islam. I became a Christian. It's just the strangest thing to me. So it's really, really important to show the diversity.
While we're here, I want to share a brief story, and I do want to get back to the billions spent on mischaracterizing Palestinian men. But while we're here, I learned something, and you can let me know how true this is, but I believe it to be true. I typically will only engage in scholarly sources or journalistically credible sources of news content, and then I have to do my due diligence after the fact, but I can't cite it right now, so feel free to help me out.
Okay.
But this part I know to be true. I'll paraphrase, but a long time ago, call it the 20s, 30s, maybe, in this country, it was in California. There was a Middle Eastern man who ended up in some sort of trouble. He was a police officer, but he ended up like arresting a senator's kid or something like that. The senator or whatever. I don't know the details of the story like that, but basically they said this was an unjust arrest because this man is not a U.S. citizen. And so the citizenship test at the time, was if you lived in the United States for a certain amount of time, then you automatically got your citizenship. But that only applied to white people, right?
Wow.
And again, the particulars, I might get a couple of them wrong, but the story overall is factual. You could look this up. So anyway, this case made its way up to the Supreme Court. And the argument, and this is why I'm telling the story, the argument was, because this man was a Middle Eastern man, the argument ultimately became, Your Honor, what race was Jesus? And they had to decide in that moment, the Supreme Court of the United States of America had to decide if Jesus was Middle Eastern or if Middle Eastern people were white. And they decided that Middle Eastern people were white. And so where I'm going with that is that the connection that I made there is that there was another piece of information that I came across that said that Jesus was Palestinian.
Yeah.
And I thought that how crazy is that is not more widely celebrated.
I know, it's really cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And we know that Jesus comes from Jewish people.
There's
Jesus is
always
Jewish
been
person.
Jews in Palestine.
Right. Exactly. And that's
not weird to us at all.
Okay. All right. So anyway, your thoughts, and then we'll talk about the billions spent.
I was in Tunisia last week, and I turned a corner and with my friends, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, this is the Jewish quarter of this town," and I was like, "Oh, cool." There was not one Israeli flag. They are Tunisians who happen to be Jewish. And in Palestine, that's what it was too. Like they're from that land, and they also happen to be Jewish, and they've just, it's not a big deal. It got politicized pretty heavily in the last 76 years. But, you know, my grandfather growing up, one of his close friends was Jewish. It just wasn't a thing. Nobody talked about it.
Sure.
Between Christians and Muslims, my mom tells me, you know, they would like celebrate each other's religions, and it's Christmas. They have like a parade down the streets, and the Muslims would be on the rooftops. We have flat rooftops, and they'd like throw candy down onto the streets. Like there was nothing that you see now, that you hear about now, but it makes really good propaganda, makes really good news stories. It makes it good, what Q likes to say about othering people.
Yeah. If I may, before we move on.
Yeah.
One of the things that Palestinian said when he was last on the show, and I don't think that this is a secret, so I'm going to share his faith. He is an Islamic Palestinian man. But he said something, and it stayed with me. Not only did he pray in my presence, I thought that was just beautiful, because the way Muslim people pray, I think, is very special. Yeah. There's a certain reverence there. But he also shared something on the show at the time he was on. And he said something, effectually what he said was, in terms of Palestine, Jewish people beautify the land.
I was here.
Yeah, you were. So you remember he said that? That was so beautiful. That was like poetry.
Yeah.
And he's a person that can feel like he could be given to propaganda. He can be given to all the lesser, more limbic sort of responses.
He also has every right to be fuming.
Exactly.
He has every right to hate as much as he wanted to hate.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
But he chooses not to. I choose not to. And sometimes it's hard, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard, because there's a lot of pressure to feel like you have to be the perfect victim. You know? And then this happens a lot. You must understand, as a black man, if something happens, if a police officer does something to a black man, it's like, well, what did you do? You know, to maybe
did you comply?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And that's pretty similar to it. So anyway, we're angry. We're really angry. We're watching our family and friends and people we love and our kin being ethnically cleansed and genocided. We have every right to be really angry. And instead, we spend our time going on talk shows, on radio shows, talking to people, going out in the streets, and trying to, with as much as we can, speak with love.
Well, this is not. I would not intentionally or deliberately profit or benefit from your trauma. I don't believe in that. My hope is that this feels like a way to bring people into the conversation, and I hope that it's always felt that way. I do think it's. When you talk about how it people feel angry. I think that at least the people that I've talked to, they've been able to be very clear-minded in that their anger is with the nation state of Israel and key actors, and not with Jewish people. And so the narrative that being critical of Israel somehow means that you're anti-Semitic.
That's a great propaganda point.
Right.
That's great propaganda.
Now watch this. As a journalist, a semi-quasi journalist, I mean, there's people who are more bona fide. I'm a radio personality, but I work in a journalistic space. I have had to have conversations with people who are pro-Israel. And when you said that you feel this pressure to be the perfect victim, I feel like I've seen that. I've seen the framing of conversations from people who are pro-Israel in such a way that you have to almost dig the humanity of Palestinian people out of the conversation, out of the narrative that a lot of folks were trying to chronicle back when I was a little bit more deeper in my investigative, bag once upon a time. And so I think that your statement reflects the reality that I have been exposed to. But let's move on. We last spoke when there was an election looming in the distance. And I remember asking you, I think you volunteered who you would vote for, and I think you were voting third party, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I decided for the first time since I was 18 years old not to vote. Not to vote,
okay. So it was something like that. But I think that you were considering third party once upon a time, or maybe it was considering not voting. I'm not sure, but it wasn't a Trump or a Kamala Harris. I remember that part very clearly. Do you feel like? Well, how about this? What are your thoughts on how the election went?
As a Palestinian?
As a Palestinian, sure, but as you too.
We were screwed either way. Okay. Because the genocide started under the Biden administration. And he's a proud Zionist. He has said, there's pictures of him when his hair was a little bit darker, that if there was no such thing as Israel, we would have to invent one. I mean, so he did not care what was happening. And his vice president, who finally decided to run, I think, if I remember correctly, Biden tried to run for a little bit, right? And then he stopped and gave it over to Kamala. So she never said that she never called it a genocide, and she never said that she was going to stop funding it. So we were like, well, obviously we cannot vote for you. That makes no sense. How in what world would we vote for the woman who's saying, hey, what's currently happening, I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm not going to acknowledge what's actually taking place. And then, but the other option, this is why we just felt so screwed over. The other option was, the current administration. He's not any better. So people were like, well, who do we vote for? And I'm like, why are you asking me? I don't know. They both are horrific when it comes to Palestinian, when it comes to the occupation, when it comes to genocide, because they will always be in the pockets of AIPAC. They all get funding from AIPAC. You cannot change the mind of a politician if they have gotten money from the American Israel Lobby Group. It does not happen. They are in their pockets and they run everything. This really is the United States of Israel in ways people, I don't think they understand how deep it goes. So either way, we were screwed. And then just emotionally, like I remember talking to you guys, and I remember Q talking about what's that,
Project 2025.
Yeah. And him just being like horrified, and he has kids, and he was like, this can't happen, and what do we do? And we were like, yeah, that's horrible. But there's currently a genocide happening too. Like, how do we ignore that to vote against? Like, these are our only options. That's it. That's all we could do. And so we felt so, and the problem is everybody was coming to Palestinians being like, what do you want from us? Like, who should we vote for? And we did not have an answer for them that wasn't one of those. We didn't want you to vote for either one. And that we just felt like there was no way out. And what really needs to happen is, and this is something that you understand as a Black man, the system runs fine. The system runs as it's supposed to, right? It's not like the system is broken. It's doing its job. It's a military industrial complex, and it's making money in a military complex. So it's been rough, and a genocide continued, and this ceasefire is insane.
We'll get to the ceasefire in a second. We'll get to the ceasefire in a second. I want to ask a challenging question to you, to my sister, okay? And for people that are able to hear this question, I want you to reflect on it, you know, in terms of how it fits in your world. I think this is going to take me a while, so give me a long runway here.
Okay.
I think that I'll speak for myself. For me, because I consider myself an activist. You know, I go out and protest. I love being outside. It's like that's my joint. I like getting out there. I marched with people who were so passionate about shining a light on what was going on in Gaza. I was also made to choose from the only two choices that we had, which were Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. But I also wanted to bear in mind the sensibilities and the feelings and the plight of my new Palestinian brothers and sisters. I admitted that prior to October 7th, Gaza and Israel, I didn't know the first thing. I wouldn't even know that Israel was a Jewish state. It was a word that people said. I had no concept of who lived there or anything, right? Or Gaza for that matter. Since then, having learned who lives there and what's going on, you're like, oh my gosh, this is such an awful thing to be happening on this planet. I have to vote. I have to bear in mind that I know people who my vote will affect their material reality. So when I ask, hey, I have to do something, otherwise it's chosen for me, which of these do I choose? It comes from that place. Okay. The other thing I want to say here, and this is probably, I'll let you decide. When you listen to what was being said at the time and you frame it, everything in its proper light, proper framing. Joe Biden, indeed, a proud Zionist, who said that if there wasn't a nation state of Israel, we would have to create one. Sending money to Netanyahu to fund the genocide in Gaza. And Donald Trump, who said, yo, he needs to finish the job. This guy, you know, later he went over and says, we need to put hotels all over here. Like, that was his general approach and the approach of a lot of people on the right. Some people on the right, to be fair, have come around. But at the time, a lot of folks were very pro-Israel and willfully, intentionally ignoring the suffering on the ground in Gaza. So it wasn't until Kamala Harris stepped in. And, you know, one of the things that we had to do was frame her in a proper light. In that position, this might be me giving her a lot of grace, and I need you to check me if I'm doing that. I'm sure you will. But one of the things that we had to do was understand that she was the vice president. It wasn't her administration. She was a part of it. To say that Joe Biden is wrong while running for president under his administration is a challenging position to put herself in. And she had no power to change the material reality for anyone until she became the president. Between her and Donald Trump, she's the only person that said we need a two-state solution. And she said that repeatedly, and she said that in a place where Ramses physically was in the building. She could have been lying through her teeth, but Donald Trump actually said, actively said the opposite of that. So when I went to go and vote, I was voting with as much of that in mind as I could. And a lot of that didn't make its way to a lot of people, which is why I suspect, Q challenges me on this, but why I suspect a lot of people simply didn't vote because a lot of people, I believe, really cared about what was going on in Palestine. People that otherwise would have been votes for Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party. So my question is, and I think I know how you're going to answer it and do it. I'm ready for both barrels. If you have a magic wand and you can go back and do it all over again, do the protest votes, the abstaining from voting, do the third party votes, do we do that again as a Palestinian group? Do we call on our allies as Palestinians to do the same thing? Or do we choose between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, given where we are at this point in our shared reality?
I have seen Kamala walk up to AIPAC and say how she will always be a friend to Israel. I want to liken this to some really high up politician in the 1940s. I don't remember who the vice president was. I don't know if I ever did know. Saying live in front of people, hey, Germany, I know you're kind of doing a bad thing right now, but just know we're always there for you. We will always be a friend to Germany. In what world would we go, okay, but give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's just talking and then later he won't be a friend to Germany anymore. We can't do that. It's a big ask. And what was so frustrating after the election is we got blamed for it. We got blamed for Trump winning. See, if people weren't so pro-Palestine, if people weren't so up in arms about what that administration was doing, then we would have kept voting for Democrats and then Trump wouldn't have won. So how many times do we as Palestinians have to, and I don't like playing the victim card, but how many times do we have to suffer here? We're already being genocided and ethnically cleansed. Those of us in the diaspora are watching it happen, and we feel so helpless. And then we got a crap administration in, and it's our fault. I don't know what more you proverbially, what you want us to do. That's not our fault. We're already dealing with a lot.
So the last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on. You don't envision things having gone any better than they're going right now had Kamala Harris won.
I mean, I have to assume, if I had to guess, just based on what she has already said, based on what I know about her, I don't see it going
any better.
I don't.
Now here's the other part.
Can I just say, she'll just sound prettier. She'll use flowery language. That's what Democrats do. Democrats use prettier language, and they dress nicer, and they're a little bit more sophisticated, and they're the city slicker, blah, blah, blah. And that whole like trope, that whole stereotype is what they use. But at the end of the day, Washington is Washington, two sides of the same coin. And I think people are starting to see that now, that there's really not that much of a difference.
Now, on that one thing, I want to say, because, and I'm sure you'd agree, when it comes to Israel and AIPAC and what would have happened. Well, no one has a crystal ball. No one has that sort of epistemic access to the future. I'll give that to you. I will say that in its entirety. But I would be remiss, and it would be a disservice, I think, primarily to Q, who's living in a different reality now, but also to a lot of our listeners, to say that Democrats, had Kamala Harris won, the reality for a lot of people would have been the same as it is under Donald Trump. Now, barring the Israel thing, which again, I can't say one way or the other, as you mentioned, that sort of flowery language, it's not fiery, anti-human, anti-immigrant, anti-black history, anti-black women,
No, I
and
get
all
it.
that sort of language. And so I know that you weren't saying that, but I
No.
just want to be responsible with this platform and make sure that I say that. I want us to, I have a lot more questions for you, so I want us to resume this conversation in just a quick tick.